Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new podcast. My name is JJ Vola. Alongside here is my co-host, Cal. Thank you for being a part of today's podcast as we have a special guest, and not only a special guest, but a very special one. That is my mom being on today's podcast. Thank you, Mom, for being a part of today's podcast. Tell the world what it is that you do and a brief description of what it is.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me today. It's been a very proud moment in the making. I'm very, very proud of both JJ and Cal for stepping forward and doing something that they love. Myself, my name is Heidi Tillmanns, and at the ripe old age of 54, I'm a signage professional. Some people call me a signage expert. And currently what I do is I work for Trans-Canada Trail, which is the longest network of recreational trails across Canada. And I am their Director of Trails and Infrastructure, which also includes signage. Along with that, then I also do consulting work on the side where I advise and create sign plans for different organizations. And I also write for Signs of the Times magazine. I'm a contributing columnist on a regular basis, and I also do webinars and I speak at different colleges regarding signage.
Wow. Okay. Well, don't give it all away. No.
All right.
we got
you asked.
You asked. Holy.
I know.
Where do we start?
I know. But let's take it back to way back, a younger journey.
Yes.
Heidi Tillmanns, growing up in your work life, what was some of your first jobs, schooling that you've done, everything like that?
Yeah. I've had a very interesting life that way. When I first started working, I was 4 years old. I started modeling. I did Sears, Eaton's catalog, runway shows as just a fashion model. With that was from 4 years old till about 10 years old. And with that, then we moved overseas. So my dad was an electrical superintendent. We moved to Accra, West Africa in Ghana, and lived there for 3.5 years. Made me appreciate Canada so much more. And with that, when we were over there, there was no such thing as going to the local sign shop. So they sent over an engraving machine. And because with an electrician, you have to have these little gravel ply signs that go above the panel. And no one wanted to do it. So I stuck my hand up and I thought, okay, well, I'll do it 10 cents each. And I would do it at night after dinner. I would do all these little gravel ply signs. And when at the end of it all, I had enough money to buy myself some gold earrings. And I still have them to this day at home. So that started somewhat of my signage journey, because then when I came home, I was always that student that did posters for dances, or, someone needed a car wash sign, that would be me. I always loved doing art. The only thing was growing up, it was just in that time where, signage industry was it still is very male dominated. Co-op was just becoming a thing in high school. And in grade 10, we had a teacher come in and they said, there's a co-op at the local sign shop. And I'm thinking, perfect, wonderful, I'll do that. Saw him after class, said, nobody else wanted it. He offered it to everybody, most of them boys in the class. And when it came back to me, it's like, no, they won't take you because you're a girl.
No way.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Wow.
So I just, okay, well, that's how it goes. And not thinking, no, never mind, because I came up from a family of 5 brothers, and my job was to get married. I wasn't to go to college. I wasn't to have a career. Like, why would I want a career? Man was going to take care of me. So I just, okay, well, that's what I must do. And I ended up finishing high school, and I wanted so much to go to Sheridan College, and it was not supported by anybody except my grandmother. And she helped me, and I got some grant money, and I went to Sheridan and studied illustration. And so, because I thought graphic design was boring back then.
Right.
So, and in between then, tried the modeling thing again, took odd jobs. Of course, I worked at a fish and chips shop. I worked at a grocery store. I've done all that kind of hard knocks things. I think those are more things that you learn what you don't want to do in life. And those are just as important as any other journey that you go on. But Yeah, shortly after college, I started, you'd have to go to Toronto to get those illustrator jobs, or you had to know somebody that knew somebody, and they were harder to get than what I thought. And working in the sign industry was more readily available as a creative. And it was sort of like that nice mix between trade and commercial artist. And when I first entered the sign business, computers were just becoming a thing. And, and not everybody wanted to do it. The old school sign guys, they wanted to do the quills and the maul stick. And with that, then, it wasn't something of interest to me. I watched, I paid attention, I learned it. But where I really skilled at was Corel Draw was just entering the market. And that's where I landed, and that's where I still am today. And
Corel.
yeah,
Corel
Corel Draw.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Jesus.
So
back in school, it was all by hand, like everything.
all
that
by
you did.
hand. Yep.
Oh my goodness. So,
Yep.
I mean, what were those classes like? It was. I mean, how would they conduct teaching you?
You would have life drawing classes. You'd have object drawing classes. It would all be with templates and mechanical pencils. Photocopier was probably the most advanced piece of equipment that you'd use. Computer graphics was being introduced at Sheridan College, but it was a summer course.
Okay.
It was new, right? Even in animation, because where I went, the animation course was the same thing. They would have a light table. Everything would be drawn by hand. Nothing was computerized back then.
Wow.
And, even just registering, you physically had to go to the school and get everything. There was no such thing as online. So,
Wow. It just goes to show the generation today, how grateful you are, how easy it is.
Yes. Yeah. I think the most important thing is just realizing that you do have to adapt and change. What I learned back then, sure, fundamentals, but it's great to tell the story now to see how far I've come. Sure. But you guys will have the same story, right? You'll say, "Oh, once upon a time we sat and we had mics and cameras and these light," and they won't be there in 20 years. It'll be something new.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
Yeah.
Jeez. So after leaving school and then going through all those jobs, and what was kind of like your big first job, if you will?
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, for the most part, we would do, any kind of commercial signage. It was, again, a lot, even though you had a computer and you had vinyl. It was a Gerber 4B, which the screen was a little LED output, and you had to know everything to put it in. A font was $500 that you inserted in, and you'd only be able to afford 3 or 4. So if someone came with a fancy logo, you hand cut it, or you hand painted it, or a combination of both. When computers really started, it being the norm, it was still 10 grand back then to buy anything worth anything computer wise. Wow. And the biggest probably for me back then, it was probably when we started doing Fortinos work. Everything up till then was just like 1-ofs, 2-ofs. Someone was opening a store, someone needed a truck lettered, someone, and signage. Yeah, you probably have a repeat customer that comes back once or twice a year, but for the most part, they're one and done. They just need a sign. Right. So there was nothing like that until, we started doing Fortinos work, and then it became more design build. Mm-hmm. So originally, you'd get sign plans, usually from the architect, but then, at the time, the gentleman that we worked for was very instrumental in how he wanted things to look. So he needed that one-on-one kind of conversation and the development of the look. And it wasn't just with the signage, but with everything. So he was more in tune with the cabinetry, how the fruit sat. Like, it was just a morphing of, if you kind of think of how once upon a time, and I don't know, maybe you guys don't remember, but, you go into a supermarket, it was white. And it, had very simple signage. And then something happened where going shopping was to be an experience. Right. And that I was a part of that transition where you walked in and you felt like you were walking down a street, and that's when Starbucks started becoming more aesthetically pleasing, and just malls became aesthetically pleasing. So it was more of the look than anything. So, but yeah, and then Fortinos, we rode that wave for 15 years, and then life had a bit of a change of pace, and then
back to Fortinos. I was the
Yes.
poster boy for the car
Yes.
corrals. and if I can find the picture, I'll put it up for the YouTube channel so people can see it. Because I remember
Yes.
seeing it years ago. There was one that was still left. I think it was in Hamilton.
Yep.
And I had to take a picture of it before they took it down because I was like, wow, look at me. I didn't even get paid for that. No, I'm kidding.
You got something.
You were a child star.
Yeah.
You were a child star.
That's right.
Every time you got to push the
That's it.
cart in, and then you get to see
Yes.
2 kids, and that was my sister and I. So thank you to my mom.
That's it. That's it. And actually, when you go to Fortinos, there's a few murals. And if you look, there's always usually one with an apple tree and 4 apples that represent you, Chelsea, Brad, and Jen.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that there was always subliminal stuff that, even to this day, like there's signage out there that I do for the trail that you and Chelsea and family are all mentioned in there somehow. So, but it's subtle. It's subtle.
So sneaky.
Yeah, yeah.
Little breadcrumbs,
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a good joke.
She's gonna tell us a story.
Yeah, there's clues at the end. Yeah, that's where your inheritance is found.
The treasure.
That's right.
It's on the trail.
It's on the trail. That's right.
That's right. Wow.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible.
So then after Fortinos, what did you get into?
So Fortinos was a great contract. It then we became like supermarket specialists, right? So then we started doing the bar and fruit markets, which aren't around anymore. We did a few Zehrs, a few Loblaws. Certain departments got sort of franchised, and then those signs got shipped across the country. And then that just changed. Like that whole market changed. Recessions were hitting. And, money just stopped. We had a bit of a change in career. Life had a change of plans a little bit. And, took a few more odd jobs. And then I always did sort of a side hustle thing. I always did my own thing. I'd make signs for people who wanted stuff.
That's right. And by the way, if anybody's looking for a custom sign.
So I always kept my fingers in the making of them. I always loved making them, and just going back to that conversation about, gender bias, like I experienced that at Fortinos. There would be me and another woman on site, everybody else would be male. And then, you get asked, are you lost? Or, just you get hit on, you get side comments, you'd ask for help, you wouldn't get it. There was a time when I was pregnant with Chelsea, and we were working on Fortinos Dundurn, and we had done these fake girders, and they were all made of foam. And it was nighttime renovation, and I'm walking through the supermarket, pregnant, in work boots and a hard hat. Union Stewart came out of nowhere. You stop, like you're taking away a carpenter's job. I'm like, I'm whatever, 6-8 months pregnant, carrying like a 10-foot long girder. Like this is not heavy. I'm not obviously this is a art item,
Right.
So anyway, so it was just always that kind of fight in that field. And it's funny because I just went down to Vegas about a month ago to speak there about women leading the industry. And it's the same, like in a room of 100 women, like we all have the same story and we didn't know each other were out there, that we were all in the same spot. We were all experienced that kind of, well, you're good at vinyl, you're good at, clean stuff, office stuff, but I just love making stuff. So like to me, it was just what we had to put up with because, and we all felt the same. Like you just took the knock on the chin and okay, whatever. I love what I do. I'm good at what I do and just focused on that. So, but with that, then having that sort of inner confidence, then if you had the opportunity to do something new, I would yeah, I'll do it. I'll try.
Right.
Why not? Let's go.
Because it really gets to show your creativeness and how fun you can make something from nothing into something, right?
That's right.
And having that passion, I think that's so important.
Yes.
And like maybe a lot of people, if that happened to somebody and they would have been, you know what, like maybe I should do something else. Like maybe this isn't a place for me and whatnot. And like, you having that passion and wanting to do it and show that you're the best and I can do what guys can do, like and whatnot, and maybe even better, so which is definitely the case. So that's incredible. Amazing.
Thank you. I still enjoy it. Like recently I was speaking to a colleague and, when I get into the zone, I referred myself as a sign geek and, and that they have to put up with me while I speak sign talk. And, you can see them taking notes, which is the coolest thing. Because I just think after all these years of doing it, like you all must think the same way I do. Like you must all know everything about signage the same way I do. And then realizing that, really they don't, right? That I have to have that kind of compassion and also to empathy that I don't expect people to be a mind reader and that they can, I can express myself openly and not be judged and then ask questions the same thing back and go from there. Yep.
So how long total, like, have you been in the sign industry for now?
So without having to explain things, the safe answer is I always say I started at 20, but knowing that I started at 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Okay. So 44 years in the sign business.
A pioneer.
Wow. I know.
That's great.
Pioneer of signage.
It's true. And through all the thick and thin, all the times that you probably felt like you should have quit or done something else, or all the guys that told you couldn't do it, or whatever the case is. I mean, here you are today. It's such a great example for a lot of females out there, and even being my mom, right?
Yes.
How grateful I am to watch you go through everything that you've gone through. Has been amazing. It's such a great legacy that you're gonna leave, and it's great to think that with all the signs that you've created, especially all over across Canada, which I know we're gonna get into, like it's your little trademark everywhere you design a sign. So it is really cool when you think about it.
Yes, when I express like the extent of the trail at 28,000 kilometers. In that I'm responsible for all the signage across the country. Well, even if you just think that usually a trail has a sign, at least 2 signs, at least every kilometer, if not 5 kilometers. So just calculate that in your head and then add all the interpretive panels. So those are the ones that are storytelling, the ones that tell you, what tree that is or what historical monument that is. And then there's the trailheads that usually have information like mapping and what you can and can't do on the trail and stop signs, regulatory signs, speed signs, don't jump off the cliff signs, don't feed the bear signs, all this kind of good stuff that you have to maintain and manage so people have a safe journey. And for us it's part of risk management, liability, right? Everybody has to have insurance, same thing on a trail. So with that, it's important to tell someone on the trail what they can do, but it's just as important to tell them what they can't do, right? Because then they can always point to the sign and say, well, you didn't tell me I couldn't jump off the cliff, right? Didn't say that anywhere. Yet, common sense isn't always common practice.
Sure. Yeah,
so,
no, exactly.
You don't realize how important signs are, like if you really thought about it and how much thinking goes into signs, how important they are just for that purpose, but even important for brands to show who they are.
Always.
Telling people what they can and cannot do, and whatnot. So never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, everyone needs a sign.
Yeah, everyone needs a sign.
Everybody.
See? No.
Yeah. And it's funny, like in recent years, like with the advent of computers and the influx of free software, right? Canva, and you can get booted copies from Adobe Illustrator and Corel and knockoffs of all of them now. And now they even have AI that, hi, I want this, this, and this, and it designs it for you. And it's all great, but then when you look at it and you think, but it doesn't work as a sign. And, having to go to someone who brings you their logo and they're so proud of it and go, okay, look at it, now squint and walk 5 feet backwards. Can you read it? Oh, you can't read it. Well, no one's going to read it out in the wild because you have so much competition. Like, think about when you drive down a road, how many signs there are, right? You have 20,000 images, like, within an hour. And then you have your own thought. And then you have the lights. And then you have the angle. And you have the distance. And so you have something that's light pink on a white background with some script style, at someone's doing their nails. Like, they're not going to find you. That sign's useless. But to have those new conversations, those are hard because these, younger people are so proud of themselves for designing something that looks perfectly great when it's on their face and inches away on the computer. So
yeah, it's so true. I mean, you can go into any supermarket, all those shows or signs that you see, like on those banner signs, right? Like, you see the ones that really stick out. You know, like the ones that people really take the time to eye-catching, the colors and the contrast. Because even like there's just times where like they'll have like a black sign, but then, or it's a white sign, but then blue underglow, and just like you cannot make it out at all of what it says. So you're, it's just, but it's so true. The ones that are eye-popping and catching and can hook you, you can tell they go through a lot of thinking into the signs for sure.
Yes. And especially in Ontario now, like, we have the Accessibility Act where you have to design signage that, meets certain design requirements for the visually impaired and for those who have color blindness, right? So blue and green, when you put them together, they are the same tone. So on a, what's the first colors they want to do on trail signage? Green and blue, right? And how many times I have to know you can't. You can't. You can do blue with white or green with white or green with gray, like some, or, but you have to have high contrast and, the script styles and the serif letters. You can't have that. You have to have bold, easy to read, left justified, very clean lettering to be legible. So,
do you have any sign fails, like just absolute?
My God. Mine or other people's?
I'm thinking about the license plate right now. The new license plates they came out with, and I was like, and they couldn't read them. Like like you said, they just blend. Like it looked like the same color. It was blue and gray or something like that.
It was white. Yeah, it was reflective white, but at night, reflective white turns gray. Yeah, it looked like a Q-tip box. Sure. Just saying. Nothing against Doug Ford. Nothing at all.
They should have consulted with you before.
Nobody asked me. I know.
I know, right? Now they know.
My phone's always on. I don't know.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. Now, just to go back to, because I know there was, you left to go out to BC for signage, and then you also came back and walk us through that journey of, how you got into Trans-Canada Trail, like where you started and where you are today.
Okay. So back when we made the decision to go to BC, work had dried up in Ontario. Life had changed here. Feeling a little frustrated, down. My partner at the time, my boyfriend, he experienced the same thing. And, one late night, on LinkedIn, I think, or I found this job in BC, which sounded very romantic. And I thought, okay, Vancouver. Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Then go look at the map and then keep going up and north and north and north. And it was like an hour away from Alaska border, right? And in a little place called Terrace, BC. But they were really busy because they had Kitimat, which was sort of the same idea of Hamilton. Has a really deep harbor. So they had aluminum processing there. So tankers could come in, and, they have LNG plants out there, and they have quite the mining community out there. So there was work. So out there, I went out there, I was a general manager for a sign shop, and we were busy doing a lot of factory work, and which gave me a different perspective and a different skill set because I was so used to doing supermarkets and individual small business stuff like that. So now to do an industrial design build was really cool, right? To do office buildings and things like that. But then in a blink of an eye, like gas prices changed, Fort McMurray slowed down, and all of a sudden BC wasn't as busy anymore. And it just all worked out because then here work had picked up. right? And we came back. We made the decision to come back. I missed everybody, first and foremost.
Welcome back, Mom.
I encourage anyone, if you can travel and live in BC, just to have that Canadian experience. Like, do it. Like, and same out east too. Like, I feel this country is big and beautiful, and that's the nicest thing about working for TCT, is having the ability to travel, to go visit these locations and be able to see this beautiful country, which it truly is. And so when I got there, it was good. It was fun. It was okay money. Like, as you know, my brother warned me, BC stands for bring cash because it is expensive, right. Especially in northern BC, right? Where, like,
you have to travel everywhere.
You have to travel everywhere. Yeah. The plane is, a 5-seat Cessna to get out of there, and it doesn't leave if it's clouded over, because you're in the mountains in this little bowl. So it wouldn't be unusual to not be able to leave for days on end and to have to put up with 21 days of rain, because that's what happens in northern BC, right? It's just, and 6-foot snowdrifts and being snowed in for days on end. So again, lovely experience. I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about dealing with Indigenous culture, because same thing, even though it was where I lived in Terrace, which was a very mixed community, but surrounding it was Indigenous communities, and they work on their own cultural timeline, and to have patience with that, and to respect that, and to have their languages respected. So that was my first sort of insight on Indigenous culture, on acknowledgement, so it was the first time I ever learned about residential schools. And I actually worked with someone who went to a residential school, and never in my million years I knew this was happening in Canada. And my, like, the last residential school was closed the year you were born, right? Like, no clue that this was a part of history. It was very eye-opening to be then engrossed with that kind of culture. Because here, living in Southern Ontario, we don't have that. We have to go to that. And when you live within it, you learn it a little bit differently than just showing up at a powwow for a school trip and so forth. So coming back, it was a matter of homesickness. We had both agreed at the time that we wanted to come back. My boyfriend, Patrick, he found work here. On my way back, I'm sitting there. By then, we have cell phones now, right? So all the way back, I'm applying for work, right? And trying to find something. And I did. I had a few things lined up and got back, and I had a few interviews, one of them being in a large commercial sign company in Southern Ontario. And I went for the interview, and it went well. And, it was one of those kind of places that, come back for a second one and a third one. And, we want you to meet so-and-so. So it was like, all right, I must have the job. Like,
sure.
I'm fifth interview, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm all confident thinking, okay, this is great. I just left BC, landed in Ontario. We're good to go. Didn't skip a beat. And meanwhile, I'm still doing my side hustle, right? I've still got ads on Kijiji and Facebook, and I still have my little sign plotter. So I'm still doing vinyl decals for, some trucking company that needs, numbers on the back or whatever. Because that's just, I think when you have that kind of skill and you know that you can rely on it, you just tend to, I need $10, I need $100, I need 1,000.
Find a way.
You figure it out.
Sure.
Yeah. And when you have your tools, even if they're the basics, you make it happen. And then, so when I got back and I had all these interviews, I'm sure I got the job. And the last interview, and the guy was very nice. They realized my skill set didn't fit the mold of just one position, right? So they were going to have me do a little this and a little that and a little this and a little that, which was great, because I thought, okay, shows me all the parts of the shop, down for it. And I met the gentleman. Nothing wrong with the gentleman, but there was too much of a past reference in similarities to the person that I was dealing with. And I'm like, I can't work here. But the panic I had, right? Because in my mind, it was always, you must take this job. Like, you've interviewed now 5 times, like,
right.
You're committed. And also too, with that whole, you're a girl, there's expectations of be the good girl, don't rock the boat, don't push back, be nice. And I thought, I can't take this job. And I did. I turned it down.
Wow.
Not knowing anything, right? Other than I could still make my $100 off the back of my car if I had to, right? Yeah. But I still had you guys little, right? I still had bills. And I came home, cried my eyes out because I'm thinking I've disappointed everybody, not realizing that I did what I felt I had to do. Yeah. And then the very next day on LinkedIn, Trans-Canada Trail job position was there. So I applied.
I'm getting goosebumps.
I'm like, I know.
It's like, cool. Wow.
Yeah. So I applied, and it did it. It asked, do you have, because Trans-Canada Trail is nationwide, they wanted to know, do you have experience dealing with Indigenous cultures? Yeah. Do you have dealing with Ministry of Transportation? Yes, because same thing in BC. You dealt with a lot of like the RCMP. We would do all their cars, so we would know more about their Ministry of Transportation in BC from that point of view. And do you have this? And I just checked all the boxes. There was, the only thing I didn't have was they asked if, bilingual was an asset. Because TCT isn't part of the federal government, but we're funded by Parks Canada through the federal government. And it was just, I'm like, oh, I got it, right? Like, and first phone interview went well. Second phone interview, same thing, went well. They asked me to come to Montreal for an interview in person, went well.
Wow.
And it was the hottest day in July. I'm dressed in a suit, right? And the 3 ladies that met me, they're all just in little summer dresses and everything. And I'm like, I am just, melting in this, old Montreal office building at the top floor that had no air conditioning. And I'm just like, oh, I'm dying. And anyway, so we had the in-person interview in July. They called me back mid-August. Right. And I just keep bugging. Right. I just keep bugging. And then I start finding pictures on website going, and this is how I'd improve this sign. And this is how I would do this differently. And I just kept emailing, nothing provoked by them. They finally did push back and go, okay, create a sign plan from here to here. What would you do? And they did that. And they finally hired me in September. And I started in October. But it was still a 6-month process between I saw the job ad. And so in the meantime, my bills are still happening, right? Nothing stopped that, right? Kids still wanted money, something or other, right? And so then I started at TCT. I was their signage manager. I became their national signage manager, and that's where it stayed for a very long time. We've had a change in board, right? We are a non-for-profit, so we are run by a board. We have CEO, and that everything changed. And just before COVID, and Eleanor McMahon is now our new CEO. She has huge government ties. She's former press secretary for Jean Chrétien, and she was MP for tourism. So she has a wealth of governmental and tourism interests. So we have just been flung into a different direction, and it's great because the growth within TCT has been incredible. And with that, then I became a trail manager as well as the signage manager, and now I'm a director. So, and now I have a staff, which is cool, right?
No way.
Comes with, I have my manager, who is Angela Moran. She's in Halifax, near Halifax, and Ramon is in Athabasca, Alberta. And then Ainsley is in Toronto. So not only do I have staff spread across the country. So just dealing with those logistics, right? Having staff and working remotely, and, dealing with personalities and, bad days and, confrontations and things like that. So, and then at TCT, what we do for the most part is we hand out grants to help with trail construction, maintenance, signage improvements, benches, things like that. So people have to apply. We assess them, me and my staff, and then we hand out money.
Wow.
So, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
and then to see, and to me that, like you said, that even though signage feels like legacy work, my work at TCT feels like legacy work, that the seed I plant today, I don't get to see grow, but your children and your children's children will enjoy the work that I'm doing today.
Sure.
And they've been around for 30 years, right? So I'm enjoying someone else's hard work who have been there before me. So,
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it. What a story.
All right.
Yeah, that's why I wanted you to say it. It's a great story because you've been with TCT how long now?
I'm coming up in my 8th year in October. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great too. Like just the growth of what you've gone through, and I'm sure it hasn't been easy in the last 3 years with COVID too, with all the delays and all that kind of fun stuff, and
yes.
People couldn't even go on the trails or public events and anything like that. I'm sure it was pretty tough, right?
Initially, we all thought we were going to be collecting unemployment, because nobody knew, right? We all kind of had a bit of a heads up. We had the advantage of having, obviously, government people working with us, right? So they kind of knew stuff before the general public. And also to our COO, her husband was a surgeon, or is a surgeon, I should say, was not. And so we got told, the world is shutting down. And we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what's going to happen here, but the board is committed to keeping us all employed. So let's just get up and do what we do every day. And because we all worked remotely, nothing changed for me, right? The only thing that we found was, we'd call up the city of Calgary. They wouldn't have 5 minutes for us. It's like, oh, no. Next day, when COVID hit and everybody was sitting at home, the city of Calgary and anybody else for that matter wanted to chit chat. Because they had so used to being social at work that they had no idea how to relax and work from home. And initially we were, in the signage, we just switched gears. Okay, well, we sent out signage to everybody on the trail for COVID restrictions. And, turned out we were then plateaued into an atmosphere that we never expected, because they did then say you could go on the trail, and that's the only thing you could do. So we have trails reporting over the last 3 years increase in usage, population, up to 300%.
Wow.
And comes with that all the problems with that, right? Garbage, wear and tear on the trail. A path that was this is now this, right?
Sure.
And
parking,
water mitigation, ATV use, right? Dirt bike use. People bought toys, right? And they went outside and played. And so, we never missed a beat. We never took a day off. No one got laid off. The only, like you said, the shortages of materials, construction stopped. But, but we still had forest fires and floods and things that had to be taken care of. And so we had to deal with all that regardless. So,
Now, what would you say is your biggest accomplishment in signage and being a graphic designer in your whole life?
Probably knowing where I came from, knowing the struggles that I did. I don't dismiss them. I don't play victim, though, also too. But I like to think that, the door that I walked through made it easier for everybody behind me, right? Especially women. But also too, from your standpoint, seeing that, when you wanted to go buy the RX-7, right? Hi, Mom, I got this idea. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to have that kind of mentality of, sure, I'll try, right? I may fall on my face. That's okay. If you fall backwards, as long as you can look up, you can get up. So keep going.
Right.
Right. And that's probably my biggest accomplishment, is just learning self-confidence and not being afraid.
Yeah.
Right? Because, just the worst that anyone else is ever going to say is no.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They may say other but
Yeah.
I've heard this. No means new opportunity.
That's
So,
right.
That's right.
That's right.
And I think it's just so incredible. Like things kind of slowed down here, and then you adjusted. You went out to BC, you got to experience going out west, and then things slowed down there. You came back, and then went through that whole process, and then you said no to the job.
Yes.
And then a new opportunity came up.
Yeah.
Took 6 months, and you you were, hey, what's going on? Like, have you guys decided yet?
Yes.
Here's some value, and just kept, plugging away, knocking on that door, and then eventually they're like, how are we gonna get rid of this woman?
I know. They probably just gave me the job and hoped that 6 months. Just give her 6 months.
It's the best decision we ever made.
Yeah.
So no, that's incredible. And I think for like women out there, everywhere, people in the sign industry. For women that are want to be entrepreneurial or get in the sign industry, do you have any like advice for them to get in and some words?
I do think it's easier now, right? There is like just the presence at the sign show. I hadn't been in 30 years. Like when I had gone, I just had Chelsea the first time. I had gone to Vegas to it's called the International Sign Association. So these are all the big players, right? It is a massive show. Like every manufacturer's there, every, Epson, HP, all those people. And back then it was, it was assumed that you were there with your husband, not that you were there as a sign professional. And so this time around to see, everybody, just have such an equality presence there. Mm-hmm. But then, we are still fighting to be paid the same amount of money, right? And unfortunately in the sign industry, if I truly had to go back to the sign industry, I probably wouldn't as a project manager, because I'd probably make more money in construction being a project manager than in the sign industry.
Wow.
But I'm lucky now, as in my position in more of a consulting kind of aspect, then, I like my salary the way it is now, but it took, this long to get here. Mm-hmm. Whereas the other directors that I work with, my male counterpart is 10, 15 years younger than me. And I know he's making the same amount of money I am, right? Mm. So for women, know your worth. Don't be afraid to say, hi, I want this. You may not get it, but again, the worst thing they're going to say is no. Step up. Don't be afraid. Believe in yourself. If you know it, it takes a lot to discredit someone. Like I get questioned all the time about my credentials, especially if I'm on the phone trying to qualify another sign company across country. Like, I get the same list of questions. I know they don't know me, and I know they can't see me, so they can't evaluate that they're dealing maybe with someone maybe a little older than who they think they're talking to. But for me, it's just, I feel like we're still having to fight for that kind of equality. And for other women, like, don't be afraid to do the fight. Like, it's okay to fight. Like, nothing's gonna happen, I promise. I believe now, like, you can, I think at George Brown, you can take more signage related courses where that was never available before. I believe Sheridan now has more signage-minded instruction when it comes to their graphic design department, which was never a thing before. So I think as a whole, signage is being more respected as an industry. But I'd still love to see, signage considered a trade, as just like a plumber, just like an electrician, like, because we're in this kind of no man's land. Mm-hmm. And not just women, but males too. Like, we should be having, we should be able to get a union, to go on site. We shouldn't have to fight to clarify that we're not doing the job of a carpenter. Well, just, give us the same kind of status. Let us have apprentices. let us have funding from the government to have apprentices so we can train younger people. There's no incentive for me to pass on my knowledge of all this years to somebody else. Mm-hmm. The same way, say my dad, who was an electrician, he could hire any apprentice he wanted, right? And the government would pay for it. So maybe that's my next thing. Maybe that's my next fight.
We're going political.
Share this video global.
But we're getting there. We're getting there that way.
It's a gap, if you really think about it. I mean, there's definitely a couple of industries out there like that.
Oh, for sure.
And whatnot. So, yeah, definitely that needs to be addressed 100%.
And it is, slowly but surely. Obviously, there's a lot more women getting into each and every trade every year, and more excited to, because it's becoming more okay with women being in trades. But obviously in those, certain trades, like when we had Emma on the podcast, welder and stuff like that, like she was a great example, as that's a trade that is very difficult for women to be in because of the other guys that will make it uncomfortable for those women. So, but it'll take a number of years, but hey, I look forward to seeing the growth and how you're going to be a part of that too. So I know you will. And what kind of things do you have coming up in the future?
Well, working on this wayfinding package for the Royal Botanical Gardens. So this is a side consultation that I'm doing. They have a little bit of disconnect. The Royal Botanical Gardens is a series of gardens, but they're not connected. They're very separated in Southern Ontario. So we're trying to get a cohesive look together. They too just went through a branding change, and they too just went through some executive management changes. So we've been working through that. And just last week was talking to the city of Niagara Falls regarding their 120 parks that need new signage. Wow. So I think I'm gonna just settle in for a bit and help them out. But they you can see that either the funny thing about signage is either people love it or hate it, right? And the people who hate it, and I have those people I'm working at TCT, right? They want nothing to do with it. But the people who love it get into it, and it's working with those people and getting things done that, it's always a great accomplishment going from the idea in your head to seeing it all finished. So, yeah.
So true. Even it was so funny before the podcast. I was talking to my buddy Isaac, and he brought up wayfinding. Yes. And you just mentioned that. And I was like, what is wayfinding? Yes. Can you explain that for us?
Sure. So us signage people, we're pretty simple, right? So wayfinding is simply signage that helps you find your way, right? And it's usually aero related, right? So when you go into a hospital, an airport, what do you first thing you do? You look up and try to figure out where you're going, right? We give reassurance, we give direction. So anything to find your way, right? So on the trail, there's usually a little icon letting you know that you're on the Bruce Trail, the Trans-Canada Trail, Hamilton, Burlington, Rail Trail, whatever, and there's an arrow. And that's literally all there is to that. So,
Wow.
I don't know. I just found it so cool. He's like wayfinding, and I'm like, man, what is
Find your way.
Find your way. But it's like it takes some time. Like you do have to figure it out. How people are going to get from point A to point B.
Yes.
He was talking about Brock University. I guess.
Yes.
It was a project there, and they had to figure out how students would get from point A to point B, and the best route and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of thinking behind all of it. So
there is, and that's what I do when consulting, when we're doing the trail, anywhere for that matter. Sorry, I always go back to the trail because it's what I do normally on a daily basis. Is someone will send us a sign plan, and I have this. I don't know if it's a skill or a superpower or but you ever watch The Good Doctor?
Yeah.
And you know how Dr. Murphy will stand there and then see the world. That's how I see the world. And when I'm creating a sign plan, I'm the person on the trail, right? So I see the trail around me, and I act as if I walk through it in my head as if I'm traveling the trail. I have to think like the person traveling. And you just have to, okay, here you need reassurance. Here you need direction. Like, you have to think that a human will panic within seconds if they don't know, if they think they're lost. Mm-hmm. And it's that point that you have to give them reassurance, because then they'll just go, they'll have an anxiety. Sure. Wow. So yeah, sure. That's part of what I do.
And I know we're going to end the podcast soon. I apologize because I feel like we could talk for another hour. But there's going to be a follow-up video, of course, obviously. But a couple things we like to ask every time before ending the podcast is, if you could give yourself 20-year-old advice, what would it be?
20-year-old advice? We only have how many?
Yeah.
Have more confidence. Have more faith. The one thing I have now, and probably from my experience of saying no to the job, walking away, and having something show up, and then really realizing that's how the world and the universe works. Like, I have a huge belief system in everything for a reason and a reason for everything. And I questioned everything back then. What if, sky's falling, Chicken Little. Like, it just panicked all the time. Like, I worried myself sick. My grandmother would warn me that all the time. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I would say. Just have faith, believe in yourself a lot more. Don't believe the naysayers. Listen to that little voice in your head that says you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what goals do you have for yourself for the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay. 5 years? I'm going to still remain with TCT. I'll grow more within that organization. I see us becoming a not only national expert in trails and recreational outdoor enjoyment in that field, but not like world, because part of Trans-Canada Trail, they attended, not myself, but my VP, Mathieu, and Eleanor, they went to Greece last year to the World Trails Network conference, and they encouraged them to bring it here to Ottawa next year. So we'll be all a part of that.
Wow.
So, and the funny thing is when, we are starting to see like international groups call us for advice, like, what's happening in Nova Scotia? What kind of signage do you do here? Well, why do you do it that way? And, we're kind of amazed that, we're the experts when we're, some days we're just trying to figure it out too.
Yeah.
So, but 10 years from now, hopefully retired in Costa Rica somewhere, having all my grandbabies come visit and just enjoying life a little bit more. But more consulting. Less making of anything, so you're going to have to
you find a new sign.
Suck up to your sister.
work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, that's right. And if anybody wanted to reach out to you, whether it was for life coaching or advice for signs or whatever the case is.
Speaking to you
I do. I've spoken at Durham College, mostly through webinars, and the Association of Registered Graphic Designers I spoke with. I've done webinars through TCT for training and so forth like that. So probably the best is if you just go onto LinkedIn and type in Heidi Tillmanns and contact me through there. That would be the best. If you have any signage questions, if you just want to talk about, you're thinking about getting into the sign industry and direction there. And I don't mean to be discouraging about the whole project management. I'd make more money working in construction, but that's where I am at my point in life. I'm, at a point where money matters, and not that it doesn't matter to younger people, but I just think that, again, that disassociation of respect of, construction to a signage, that there's this kind of, remedial kind of aspect to it. And the big guys who are big guys and girls, there are large some companies out there. Some pay very well, but they're very few and far between. So a lot of small, independent, self-employed. It's a great, profession to be self-employed in, but it comes with its challenges too.
So, right. Wow.
Yeah. 24/7.
It is 24/7.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Mom, Heidi Tillmanns, for being a part of today's podcast. It was absolutely great to walk through the whole journey again of listening to such an inspiring woman you are and mother that you are. So thank you for everything that you've done. And to anyone who's listening or watching, if you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to hit that like button, hit subscribe, and that way you don't miss out on any future content. We really appreciate everybody watching and being part of today's podcast, and we will certainly catch you in the next one. See you guys. Wow. That was great.
Oh my goodness. Great job. Jesus. Wow. Your mom's incredible.